First morning tea. Yes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's still dark out. It was a green Christmas. The temperature never got even close to freezing. There was no snow. What little snow we got in the weeks before has all of it melted. And it is a green Christmas. There is mud. Oh gods, there is mud. And that means that we are probably going to have a very dry summer. And we're probably going to have a lot of forest fires. Yeah. Climate change. It's a very real thing. And yes, it is being influenced by humans. And I find a lot of climate change deniers insist on claiming that the only way we can fix the climate change they say is not happening is to start eating bugs. As if this would matter. And to switch from gasoline-powered cars to battery-powered cars. As though this addresses the basic issue of the private automobile being a plague upon us all and a resource drain. And we should give even more power to the corrupt, greedy, lazy, self-serving politicians and corporate tycoons out there who are already overloaded with power, privilege, etc. I mean, it's not as though they aren't the actual source of the problem, which they are, but giving them more power, that's not going to help. Switching from one badly thought out form of private transit to another badly thought out form of private transit, that's not going to help. Eating bugs is not going to help. Why do climate change deniers and right-wingers insist on presenting these as the only solutions, when what is really needed is to do the polar freaking opposite? We need to get rid of the private automobile as a suburban commuter vehicle and an urban commuter vehicle. And we need to get rid of the heavy pickup truck, especially as a suburban commuter vehicle. We need to penalize the car companies for advertising giant pickup trucks as the safe way to get around town. And we need to coerce the car manufacturers into making smaller, more practical cars again, while we slowly build up the infrastructure that the car companies ripped out in the 1920s and 30s for trolley systems and light rail. And we need to get those things built soon. The sad reality is that we're going to run out of small, weak Arab countries to invade and plunder eventually. When that happens, where are we going to get our oil from? We're going to have to start turning against each other. All the pale-skinned Europeans are going to have to start killing each other for the oil that are under each other's countries. I can see it now. The last three countries with oil, America, England, and Norway. England and America ally to conquer Norway and suck out its oil. And then the Americans invade and destroy England and suck out their oil. Yeah. That's what the car manufacturers and the oil companies think is acceptable. I don't. Reduce our consumption of oil by getting rid of giant gas-guzzling private automobiles completely. And this can be phased in. And replacing them with battery-powered cars is not a solution, because we're just going from one problem to another identical problem. The extraction of the rare earth minerals to build the batteries. Reduce oil production to the bare minimum to sustain an economy. Bring back public mass transit. Trolleys inside of cities and light rail between cities. Connecting whole countries and continents by train. Electric trains. And the only oil that they use is for lubrication, not fuel. And yes, we can get electricity from hydroelectric sources. We can get electricity from nuclear power. We can get electricity from solar power. And those banks of batteries that are needed to run those Teslas, we can make smaller banks of batteries. Concentrate them where we have the solar panels. And use them to store the power that built up over the day to provide electricity for the night. And instead of massive open pit strip mining for them to feed billions of automobiles, we just need small shafts, small mines to extract small quantities to replace the battery blocks that wear out over the years. Now, even wind power can contribute to this. And yes, all these solutions do create initial pollution. But all that pollution happens at the beginning, and then it stops. And that's the whole point. Yes, there's a pulse of carbon released, and then there's no more carbon released. That works. As for eating bugs, I don't know where that even comes from. Maybe the fear of having to cut back on steak 5 times a week. Instead of eating bugs, let's focus on eating chicken and pork. Reducing our beef consumption to something manageable and sustainable. And turning so much of that land that is now given to cattle feed over to the production of food for people. Cut out the middleman. Absolutely. And this means that we can allow the land to rest between harvests. Get rid of the urban sprawl that is suburbia and replace it with height. Build up, not out. And yes, encourage people to plant gardens instead of lawns. I think that makes good sense. If you're growing your own onions, carrots, radishes, etc., you don't need to go to the supermarket for these all the time. You're becoming self-sufficient. And while we're at it, let's get rid of fast fashion. Teach home ec. Get people making their own clothing instead of purchasing it and throwing it away as soon as a button falls off. I don't care how cheap a Walmart shirt is. It's still cheap, and it's still trash. and that you throw it out as soon as a button falls off makes you part of the problem. Teach our children how to sew a button back on. Reward self-sufficiency and frugality in the people. And yes, shame and humiliate the wealthy, the powerful, and the privileged who throw out a shirt just because a button fell off. Yeah. Come to think of it, let's stop celebrating billionaires. And let's impose a tax on billionaires. 100% on everything above $1 billion. That means if you made $1 billion, you don't pay the $1 billion tax. If you made $1,000,000,001, you pay $1. If you made $100 billion, you pay $99 billion. And no, this doesn't mean that every factory worker has to pay 100% of their meager paychecks. This is just 100% of all above $1 billion. That means you, the ordinary workers, you're not paying the billionaire tax. And that money goes back into the economy instead of being hoarded away. And let's stop electing politicians who insist on flying private jets. Let's stop electing politicians who insist on having dinner with people who insist on flying private jets. Let's stop voting for those bastards. Let's vote for politicians who drive a compact car, who use public transit, who take the fucking bus to go to work. Yeah. Let's vote for politicians who opt for a smaller house, whose front lawn is planted with, again, beans, peas, carrots, potatoes, onions, radishes, garlic, and kitchen herbs, instead of a manicured lawn that is uniformly a half an inch tall. And let's get rid of golf completely. Golf is an obscenity. Golf is, golf is an abomination unto the gods. It is a bunch of wealthy people saying, look at me, I have all this land, I can use it to chase a little white ball around. I don't need to produce food, because I've got all those peasants producing food for me. That's golf. If you're playing golf, stop. Just stop. Thank you. Let's turn all those golf courses back into productive farmland, the way the old gods intended. Because golf is an abomination unto the gods. Yeah. Well. And while we're at it, let's have some legal reforms. The practice of railroading the poor needs to end. And politicians who resort to us versus them to whip up a frenzy of hatred against an outgroup, they need to be penalized. Let's put them in prison for a while, shall we? Yeah. We need to stop offshoring jobs. We need to start domestic production of shit all over again. Rebuild our own domestic manufacturing. But this time, do it sensibly. Regulate it so that it reduces emissions. Make it less wasteful. And yes, absolutely, encourage fair treatment of workers. And instead of creating an enormous pool of desperately terrified, unemployed people, and a smaller pool of frightened workers who are willing to work for less just to avoid becoming part of the unemployed, let's have unionized workers right across the board. Fair working conditions, safe working conditions, healthy working conditions, and workers' rights. Sensible housing. And let's revive inner cities by making them habitable. Instead of turning them into slums where we dump the poorest of the poor, let's make them a place where everybody can live. We can do this. It's not about the money, it's about the political will. It's about the political courage to make the decisions that are necessary to have a better future for our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren, for generations that we will never meet in person, but who maybe will read about us in school as the generation that turned this ship around and sailed us back into smooth waters instead of the reef that we were hurtling straight towards. It's not about what I get. It's about what we get from all of this. And your we might be just people with your complexion. But my we is everybody. My we is everybody. When I say we, when I say us, I don't mean a handful of melanin-deficient, upper-middle-class suburbanites. I mean the global proletariat. I mean Johnny Smith, and I mean Ladislaw, and I mean Feng Li Sheng, and I mean Abdullah, and I mean Akihito, and I mean Keobambe. I mean all of those people. They are part of my collective we. We're all in this together. We need to start acting like it. More importantly, our politicians need to start acting like it. And no, I can't fix everything. Not by myself. I am one person. And that's another myth spread by the denialists. Is that one person, you're one person, you go out and fix everything all by yourself. The idea of one man fixing everything is nonsense. Because again, it's a we, not a me. It's an us, not an I. Anyway, that's all from me. I'm out of tea. I need to make more. Take care. Be well. Stay safe, ladies and gentlemen. Take care. Yeah.